I'm not sure that it's Shakespeare who originally coined the phrase, but he does use the phrase mortal coil in his writings. Mortal coil. It's an interesting archetype, isn't it? Coil, spring, spiral. I've always, for some reason, intuitively been inspired by the archetype, the symbol of the spiral. It's the name of my yoga business, Upward Spiral Yoga. To know an upward spiral, the only way to truly understand an upward spiral is to understand a downward spiral. And I suspect if you're one of the souls listening to this, you know what a downward spiral is like. You know what it feels like. It's not conceptual. It's something that you've actually been through. The times when it was bad and it was getting worse. And no matter what you seem to do, nothing seemed to help. And I guess we might call that the downward spiral of our mortal coil. It seems as though our humanity, here's another metaphor for that, Jacob's ladder. It's the transit between heaven and earth. And in our mortality, there can be a downward spiral. We might call it the fall of man, or we might call it descending that ladder. But by principle, the ladder and the spiral must, of course, go upward. Now, yesterday I talked about the new element they discovered, the 119th element called the element of surprise, surprisium, where we're actually surprised by existence. And I believe in my own experience that in order to move from a downward spiral of existence to an upward spiral of existence, it's it's an active thing that we do inside of ourselves. In other words, we, with our own free will, either activate the movement of our consciousness upward, or we activate the continued movement of our consciousness downward. But one way or the other, it's either going up or it's going down. There's no, consciousness is never static, at least not mortal consciousness. It's always moving. And by looking into the world, it's probably not hard to identify people who are stuck in some very, very nasty downward spirals. It's also evident, although perhaps a little more rare, to find those who are very much fixed in upward spiral. What might be the characteristics of an upward spiral existence? There's a predominance of love, of mission, of purpose, of joy, of enthusiasm, of anticipation, of gratitude, of health, of peace. These, of course, would be the characteristics of an upward spiral. The characteristics of a downward spiral, I probably don't need to flesh those out. But when we're in a downward spiral, whether it's a big one or a small one, perhaps one of the greatest temptations, there are temptations in this world, right? I only need to name the seven deadly sins, but oftentimes the unmentioned temptations are the temptations to be discouraged, downcast, depressed, and resigned. Discouraged, downcast, depressed, and resigned. And those are the earmarks of a soul caught in a downward spiral. And if we give way to that sort of temptation, then there's no limit to how far down the downward spiral can go. In the same way, there's no limit to how high, how up it can go. So it's really our own soul choice as to whether we're going to go up or down. And that's difficult sometimes when we feel the gravity, we feel the weight of the past and consequences and the traumas and the wounds and all that stuff. And yet it doesn't relieve us of the duty to stir up our faith and to be willing to utilize the element of surprisium and say, God, surprise me with your grace and your glory and your mercy. I trust that no matter what I see, I'm not seeing the entire picture. And then we exercise that faculty of going up and getting into that endless upward spiral. When we do that enough, we shall reach a tipping point sooner or later that tips upward, and it will be an endless sweep upward. Right now, on this plane of existence, we're probably on that teeter-totter, that fine line between those going up or down, Jacob's ladder, so to speak. So let's commit with faith, with calm, with courage, with patience to counteract any temptation to be depressed, downcast, discouraged, or resigned, and turn it upward with faith and a positive sense of expectancy. That's what Looney teaches me to do on a daily basis. And it's what I hope we all might learn in order that we might enjoy the joy of living. I'll see you guys tomorrow.